Hello everyone, welcome back to another oSTEM training hackathon video. Again, my name's Sage, my pronouns are she, they, and in this video we're going to be continuing the design for our website. And then after we do our design, which will happen for another 1 or 2 weeks, we will start the back end, which will make things functional. But in the meantime, in this video, we're going to be focusing on the design for our little article thumbnail things here. So like each of these little thumbnail summary things have a specific design to them, like a title, date, and a brief summary or just a small part taken from the longer text. And then after that, we're going to be creating our sidebar. So this is my sidebar here, and we're creating the design for that. And then if I have time, this video doesn't get too long, I'll be discussing the design for the individual post pages. So these are just separate pages that will have post information like the author, the actual content of the post, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so first we're going to start with creating those little post thumbnails. So to first do that, I also recommend having your app running because as you make changes, you could see what happens on the screen. So again, do npm start. So anyways, we're going to make a brand new folder here, and we're just going to call it post. And we're going to go inside of this new folder, and we're going to create 2 more JS files. And you guessed it, one's going to be a JS file and one's going to be CSS. So we're going to name one post.jsx. And then the other one is going to be post.css. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so the first step in our coding process is we're going to go over to the post.jsx and add all the necessary things we'll need. So that includes importing the CSS file, just like this, creating the function. I'm just copying and paste from the complete code for time purposes. And then we want our return call inside of our component. So that's just going to be return, just like this. There we go. Beautiful. And you can just name it post. And inside this return, we're going to have a divider, just like that. And we're going to give it a class name of post, so we could reference it in our CSS. So what we next need is we're going to go over to the CSS. We're going to add some CSS for just how the post and where it would be formatted in general. So I just copy pasted it over, but right now this is just saying we want it kind of small because it's going to be a thumbnail, display flex, and then you could also put your font family inside. This will specify the type of font your little thumbnail art of the article would have, and we want the flex direction to be in columns so it gets ordered properly, since we'll have multiple on top of each other basically when we have lots of posts. Okay, so I just went over and copied, pasted everything so I don't have to waste time like typing it all out, and I could just kind of explain things more step by step. So anyways, in your post.jsx, you're going to add this code, and I'm going to be typing a little bit here, but let me just explain what this means. So here we have our divider, which creates like the post. It specifies the post component essentially. Then we have a image for our thumbnail picture. And right now, I just put a default image. So I did that by referencing the image folder in the public folder. So you could go there and add like a little placeholder for now. Later on, we're going to change this to pull a image from the database. So each post has its correct thumbnail photo. And then next we have a post info divider. This just divides everything out better. And then we have a divider for our post categories, and this will list all the categories in our post. So I'm just going to put cat 1, cat 2 for now. Eventually, we're going to map every single category our post is in here when we get more into the back end and stuff and connecting the front end to the back end. And then we have a post title, so I'm just going to name it title for now as a placeholder. Date, I'm just going to put today as a placeholder. Eventually, we'll change that. And then summary, I'm just going to spam a bunch so we could see what happens there. So essentially, we need all this code, so make sure you understand it and put it in your post.jsx. And also see what happens on your screen. Right now, nothing should be showing up. So the next step is we're going to want it to actually appear on your screen. So to do that, we just need to go to our example app, and here I just created a new folder called posts. So this is going to kind of contain the list of every single post to display to the screen. So just to reiterate the difference, post is the design for one individual thumbnail summary of some post. Well, posts will contain mapping every single post we'll have from our database onto the screen. Now, right now, we do not have a backend, so we don't need to worry about that. So create this new folder called posts and add these two files. Okay, so once you make those two files inside your posts.jsx, repeat, this is the one that ends with an S, you're going to add this code. So you're going to import your CSS file, and you're also going to import the individual post into this posts.jsx. And then we're going to define our React component for posts and our class name so we could identify it in the CSS. And then for now, I just created a bunch of post calls. So right now, let me just add a bunch more. Right now, each of these are going to represent a post on our screen. And now in the post.css, just add this very quick so things look pretty. Flex centers it and makes it nice looking. Enter your font family, of course. Margin is how much is it going to be separated from the sidebar and our header. And display flex and all that good stuff. And now let me just go quickly and delete all this extra CSS temporarily. We'll get to the CSS later. I just want to display what your screen should generally look like right now. Okay, so without that CSS, you should see this mess. So without the CSS, none of our different post areas are necessarily clean or look pretty. As you can see, stuff is writing over to the other post thumbnails, and that's not good. So we need to add CSS to our post.jsx stuff. But as you can see in here, by calling all of these, it created a bunch of different thumbnail areas. So let me just, for example, delete all of these so we only have one. Your screen should update so it just has one. And basically, if you see how this works, eventually we're going to iterate and have a little loop that goes through every single post we have in our database and lists them to the screen here. But since we're not at that point yet, we're just going to leave it as this as a placeholder. Okay, so now let's go back to post.css. So let me Control Z that, and I'm just going to walk you through each CSS you should have to have it display nicely and stuff. So we already have this, but we now need to add some prettiness to the post summary. So as you saw on our screen, each summary is, well, the CSS is fixed now, but each summary was going into the other ones. So to fix this, we basically need to add this stuff here. So first we're going to choose our font family, of course, because we want it to look pretty in that regard. Our font size, line height, pretty self-explanatory. Our color, weight, margin, again, that's how separated it is from another tag, HTML tag, and then we want overflow to be hidden. And that's what makes it hide all of the other stuff, so it's not going over on other thumbnails. And then text overflow, just set it to ellipsis. Text align, we just want it centered. Display, just set it to that. And yeah, that's what you should have for post summary. You can look into more detail about what each of these things mean if you're interested, and I highly suggest playing around with these so you could get it ideal for what type of web app you want. So you don't have to have the font size to be 15 pixels. It could be 100 pixels or however you want it to look. So next to the post image. So we want the post image to be the right size and centered correctly in each of our thumbnails. So we want it to object fit to cover. We want the border radius to be 20 pixels. Basically what that does, it just rounds the edges. So if you want each one to be just a straight up rectangle, go ahead. You don't need to have this at all. But if you want a little bit of rounded edges so it looks a bit more clean, then go ahead and add border radius. Then we'll just make our margin 0 and define more of our margins just so it's nicely separated from other things. Next, our post title. We want the font, all the font stuff. Cursor will be pointer, and then our margins. Now, post categories. So this right here, these are the categories, since we're going to eventually have each of our posts be in certain categories. So right now we just have category 1, category 2. I'm just using a shorthand abbreviation, CAT. So each of our categories, we will have all the font stuff, the margin stuff, color of what we want that font to be. So just a bunch of font stuff. You could play around with that, make it look pretty. HR, what that is it's this line here. You don't need to have this, but in my design, I thought it made it look more separated and more clean. So you could go ahead and add it. So you could make this dotted if you want. That will just make each of these lines dotted, as you can see. Or I just went for solid, just showing you that there's different options. I highly recommend Googling all the different types of things. Usually if you Google CSS and then border dash top, it'll come up with all your options and you could choose what's fit, or you could do that with pretty much any of these little identifiers here. And then we just want width to be 100%. That means it goes from the very start of our thumbnail to the end. And we want our background color, color of the actual line, all that good stuff. For post state, we're going to have all the font stuff again, the color and the margin. For post info, we'll just have this here. And again, if we go back to our post.jsx, that info is this encapsulating div tag that just contains all of our post info. So let's go back there. So we want all these items, the title, or the categories, all of that good stuff. We want it all centered. We want it flex direction column. And again, you could Google things, play around with things. That's the best way to learn. And yeah. And also, another thing that's important I forgot to mention is you want to go to your home.jsx, import that post component, and call it here. And that's how you'll get things displayed to the screen. Just like that. Because our home is our home.jsx is already being displayed to the screen because we already put that in our app.js. So by putting posts here in the header, we're able to see those components. And that concludes that for the post thumbnail. Now let's move on to the sidebar. Okay, so now that we implemented that new functionality, we are going to want to make a commit. And it's always important to commit your code every time you kind of finish some component or some bigger part of the program or even smaller part. So we're going to do git status. We see we change things, git add all, check git status again to make sure those are staged, and we're gonna do git commit, and I'm just gonna name this post thumbnails. That's just what I'm calling them. And like that, and always remember to push to your remote. So git push origin main, just like that. There we go. On to the next step. Okay, to get started with the sidebar, we're first going to do what we always do when we create a new React component, is we're going to go over to this components folder. We're going to create a new folder named sidebar, and we're going to add these two files, sidebar.css and sidebar.jsx. Now, you'll open up these files in your IDE, which I use Visual Studio Code. But first things first, before you get started with this task, unlike what I did with the other one, we're going to want to add that new React component to our homepage. So just so once we get it all coded and stuff, we can actually see it on our screen. So to do that, you're going to do this line right here, import that sidebar, and we're just going to put that above our posts here. So it will display right next to our posts, according to our CSS that we're going to create. So first things first is you're going to want to add this code to sidebar.jsx. So let me explain it a bit. So up here, this just imports the CSS file. And then you're going to want to first start with your React component function, which is this part. And then you're going to want your outer div tag, which just identifies everything as part of the sidebar. And then you want a new div that is named sidebar items. And this is just going to have the title and whatever you want in your sidebar. Now, the sidebar is an interesting component because it's very flexible. You could add buttons if you want later on to different parts of your page or different links to external sites. But this is what I'm going to kind of have in my sidebar. So in this sidebar item classification tag, we're going to have a title, and I just named it About oSTEM. And then we're going to have an image, and remember, if you add an image to your sidebar, please go add it to your public/images folder so you can actually see it on the screen and put it in your repository. Because just giving it a random path that doesn't lead to an image won't work, obviously. And then I just did the alt as logo, so that means if some weird error happened and it couldn't get our picture, it will just say logo. And now for the sidebar about, this is just like a long string of text about oSTEM. This could be whatever you want. I just made it about oSTEM just as a placeholder example for this example project. And then after that, we have another divider that is also signifying a sidebar item. Also, just to note, these div tags are very useful for separating different parts of your design. So as you can tell, I want to separate all of this about oSTEM stuff to the category stuff. So we're going to have a new title, and we're going to name that categories, and it's just going to contain a list. And remember to add the class name. It's very important for our CSS. So we're just going to add a list of the different categories. So the categories we have right now are just placeholder categories, because we don't have our database yet, but I just named one cat1 for category 1 and one for category 2. You could put whatever you want for the placeholder. And you just want to save that. And also, as a reminder, make sure you did this part in your home.jsx. Now, once you run npm start, you should see some changes to your screen, even though we didn't create the CSS yet. Okay, so on to the sidebar.css. So for the entire encapsulating div tag .sidebar, we're going to have this here. So it's just going to have the margin, flex. We're going to align all the items in the center. The border radius is going to be 10 pixels. Again, that just rounds the edges for us, makes it look a lot nicer. And we're going to have our background color. So let me just show you my sidebar right now for reference. That's my background color. You don't need a background color, but I suggest one. It makes things look a lot prettier. And then the height is we just want it to fit the content, and then we're going to put our font. And again, you could get that from Google Fonts reference video 3 that I have out, and it talks about the Google Font stuff if you're skipping videos and stuff. And then we're gonna make our image fit nicely on our sidebar by adding this. So basically what this little arrow thing does is it goes into the sidebar item div or something with sidebar item class name, and it goes to whatever image tags are in that. So as you can tell, this image doesn't have a class name tag, but by doing this, we can go into, we basically look in this large chunk for any image tags, and whatever the images are, these CSS changes get applied. So we just want to manually put our width and height in our margin so it looks all nice, so it's not too big, not too small. And we're going to do that same thing for the paragraph. I just made it have some extra padding. And then for the sidebar title, I did all the font stuff, the margin stuff, play around with this, have fun. Designing is a lot of trial and error. You just kind of change things and look at your site and see if it looks nice or not. And then I added the color, font family, and then I added the borders. So what this is for the title is, this is border top, this line up here, and this is border bottom. And I just made them both solid and gray. And the same thing down here is for categories, because as you remember, our categories title and our about oSTEM title both share the same class name. So all of this gets applied to the both of those titles. And then we just have general sidebar item stuff, so we just want that centered. Flex direction column, display flex, and then for about, we just want that centered, and then the list, I just didn't specify a list style. And what that does is it makes it look better in my opinion. Sidebar list. Sidebar list. There we go. That's a little typo in our program. There we go. Now, list style none just means it's not going to have bullet points or anything. So also that typo I just caught, be careful with your class names. If you specify something, like if you say sidebar list with a lowercase l, and that's different in your JSX, in your HTML, then nothing's going to change. So be very careful with that. So let me change that back there. And then our changes should be there now. And then I just have this CSS part for the sidebar list item. So that's each of the items in the list. So it just has the width, margin. That is just each of these. So they look nice together. And basically that concludes it for our sidebar. So if you followed all of that correctly, played around with your sidebar and all that, you should have this beautiful sidebar right here on the side. And it should be on the side away from all these posts, so it shouldn't be overlapping it or anything. And it should look really nice on your site. So this is my sidebar. And our next component we're going to be working on is, I think the next thing we're doing is we're going to create each individual post page, which I showed you at the beginning of the video. So what that means is it's just going to be the basic layout. It's not going to have any functionality yet of a unique post page. Okay, so our next component we're going to make is we're going to be making the post page and also the unique post component. So I'm going to get into that in a bit. But first things first, we need to make our new files and folders. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to your pages and you're going to create a new folder called post page, just like this. And in there, you're going to create two files, postpage.css and postpage.jsx. And then after that, you're going to go back to your source, into your components, and you're going to make another folder, and you're going to name this one unique post. And in there, you're going to have, sorry about that, that should not be in there. That could go die. You're going to have unique post.css and unique post.jsx. So once you create all those files, I'm going to want you to open up your postpage.jsx and your postpage.css. Now for you, it's going to be empty, but for me, for sake of time again, I just copied everything we need into here already. So first things first, you're going to want to import React, import your sidebar component, import your unique post component, which we're going to make in a second, import your CSS file, and then create your default function for the post page for your React component. And then you're going to have your div with your class name, of course, and in that you're going to have your sidebar and your unique post. Now, what this is going to do is, like the home page, is we're going to have a larger layer. So this larger layer is going to have the sidebar and then all the information for the unique post. So this component, which we're going to code in a bit, is going to have all the information like post title, post image, post description, post date, and all of that stuff. So right now we're kind of breaking up our program into a bunch of smaller components, which makes our design a lot better. Now you could literally make your entire web app in literally one file, or two files, the CSS and JSX, but that is bad design. So again, that's why we're kind of breaking this up into a lot of different files. So once you have that, you're going to want to go over to your CSS, and you're just going to want to do this tiny tag. So .postpage display flex. And once you do that, the rest of the work is in this component. We're going to create unique post. Okay, so now that we have all that done, we're going to want to go to our unique post.jsx, and we're going to want to start making our component. So first and foremost, you're going to have our imports just like that, and then our export function like that. And I'm going to explain this in a bit. So this is the overall div tag for the entire thing. This is just our wrapper that I also included, which will have some CSS. Then we're gonna have our unique post title. So mine is just set. I just named mine hello as a placeholder. Eventually, when we create our backend and link our backend to our front end, we're gonna have this be the title from the database, but we're not there yet. And then after that, you're gonna have two buttons that we're going to implement later, the edit post button and then the delete post button. Now you're probably wondering what these class names are in these little tags, these icon tags. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to want to go to a brand new site, which I'm going to show you in a second. So you want to go here to fontawesome.com. I'll link this in the description if you don't want to type it yourself. But this site basically has thousands upon thousands of free icons. So eventually on our site, this is what we're going to be coding. Right now I only explained the title and this. So these are your two icons. So basically I got those by going here and I just typed trash, just like that. And I chose which one I liked that was free. And then I just copied this into my HTML, just like this, as you can see. But I didn't choose that exact trash icon. I chose a different one. So you could just go through these, find which ones are free, and find which ones you prefer. You could also probably have an X button instead of a trash button too, or just whatever works best with you. And I also did the same for my edit icon. And also note with Font Awesome, you're also going to have to go to your index.html in your public folder and add this link tag here. So it's kind of long, so I'm just going to link this in the description. So please check the description of this video and add this link tag into your index.html for you to get your icons properly. Okay, so now that that's over with, we'll move on to here. This is just going to be the post image. So right now I didn't specify a source. Right now I'm just going to make it be a placeholder. Eventually we're going to pull this from the back end. So I'm just going to make it my general pastel pride flag placeholder. So let me go over to locals 3000. Now you should see it there now. And yeah. And then after that, we're gonna have unique post info, and that's just gonna have information about the author, which I just put myself as a placeholder, and the date, which I put today as a placeholder. And remember to have these class names. And then you're gonna have a paragraph, and this paragraph tag is just gonna be your entire content of your post. So I just like randomly spammed my keyboard for just like a placeholder. And after that, you're done with your unique post, but not the CSS. So it will look very ugly on the screen right now. Also note that you need to go to your homepage. I think I already mentioned this, but make sure you go do this. So go to your homepage, or this is a completed one. Keep going to the wrong one. You're going to want to go to pages, home page, or actually no, not home page. Sorry about that. You're going to want to go to app.jss. And within app.jss, you're going to want to open this with the right program. You're just going to import your post page like that. And instead of home, you're going to now put post page. And what that's going to do is now when you go over to your local host, it's instead of showing your home page right now, it's going to be showing your unique post page that we're developing right now. So that's how you actually view it. And eventually we're going to have a bunch of different routes so we could click buttons and navigate pages. But in the development process right now, we don't have anything working. So we just have to manually change it in app.js. Okay, so on to our unique post.css. Now that we are done with our JSX. So let me just scroll through this slowly so you see all the code. You can pause the video if you want. Also play around with this. You can always add different new things to your post. I really much encourage that, adding new things to your website that aren't in this video. That's the best way to learn this type of stuff. Just doing things you just want to add. And that's the p tag. And yeah, so now onto the unique post.css. So first of all, the unique post is going to have flex 10. That is what is going to bring our, hold on, let me get this up. That's going to bring this over here so it's not interfering with our sidebar. Then edit post, that's just this. We're just going to specify where we want it to be. It's going to be on the right side, as you can see here. And the font size too. Unique post info. We're going to display, we want all our font information. So we want our margin, our font size, our type of font, and color. And I just did justify content space and space between. And then for unique post image, this part's important because you don't want this image to be like covering your whole screen if it's just a big image in general. So you want the width to be 100%, border radius to be 20 pixels. Again, that's what rounds the image. It's optional. You don't need that if you don't think it looks nice. You want the height to be auto, object fit to be cover, and you want the margin on the bottom to be kind of separated from everything else. For post icon is, let's see if I actually have that in there, or it may be another typo. Or actually, this part, ignore this right now. We'll come back to it later. Forgot to delete it. For unique post title, that's just your title here. You just want all your font information like this. For wrapper, it's mainly just padding because you kind of want this entire block here to be separated from everything else, like your navigation bar and your sidebar. So play around with this. Try different values, whatever looks best for you. And then we want the description, font family, stuff, line height. And let me go back to page. So that will have everything like that. Okay, so this part is a little weird here. So as you see on my site, for the first letter of my description, it's like bolded and a lot bigger. Now you don't have to do this if you think it looks ugly, but to do that, you'd go to unique post.description and then you would do this : first letter. So this takes the first character and does stuff to it basically. So I just made it bigger and more bold than the rest. Sorry. And then for the unique post button, this here, we'll get to this later, so ignore this. I don't think we have that in here yet. Yeah, ignore this. Post icon, or actually post icon, don't ignore. Let's go back to that very quick. I kind of forgot the names of things. Post icon is just our trash can and our edit button, and you want that to be gray color or whatever color you want, and then you want this here, our margin and cursor pointer, because we'll eventually be able to click on it. And then unique post description input. That right now, we do not need that part. So this part, ignore that, pretend it wasn't there. That stuff will be implemented later on when we implement our edit post functionality, which we are not going to cover yet. So after that, if you run npm start, your unique post page should look like this. And you could edit the placeholders. And again, right now, everything's just a placeholder, so you shouldn't be like wondering why your right's not working and buttons aren't working. Right now, again, we're just working on the design. So that being said, we're done with that part. And right now is a good time to put out a commit. So we're going to do git status. We changed a bunch of things. Git add, git commit, or git status, just to make sure everything's staged properly. And then we're going to do git commit. And I forgot to do this separately for the sidebar in unique post page, but I recommend doing that. If you've been doing that, that's really good, really important. I just am recoding this, so everything's pretty easy for me, so I haven't been going by increments, because that also takes time in the videos. So we're just going to name this sidebar and unique post page. Yes, like that. And then we're going to push that to our remote. Just like that. And then we're going to do git status, make sure everything's up there, and we're good. Okay, so that being said, that concludes creating our unique post page, our sidebar, and also our post thumbnails. And I think that's it for the third week. I might make another video or post more for next week earlier, because I'm going to be out of town the week of October 15th. So I'm just going to try to get some videos out earlier so I can enjoy my vacation while I'm home for my birthday weekend. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next Hackathon training video. In the next video, we'll be doing more design stuff. As you can tell, we're kind of almost finishing up on the design. We just need our login page, our create account page, our settings page, and our write post page. And then I'll leave the contact and about page, optional exercises like little homework if you want to do that on your own. And yeah, thank you for watching.